The ship was quiet. It was a deep humming quiet, the kind only found in the empty parts of space. The research vessel, named the RSS Pathfinder, hung in the blackness, a small bright thing next to a giant gray moon. The moon was called SETI 77b. It was a cold, dead rock of ice and stone, circling a distant, lonely planet. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, the crew went about their work. Soft lights glowed on the control panels. Low voices spoke to each other. Captain Lee sat in his chair. He was a man who had seen many things in his long career. His face was calm, but his eyes were always watching, always thinking. He looked at the view screen at the boring gray moon. He felt a small worry in his stomach. This mission was supposed to be simple, but space was rarely simple. In another room, a young man named Jin stared at his own screen. He was a linguist. His job was to find patterns in things, to understand messages. But for days, there had been nothing to understand. The moon was silent. Official reports said there was a structure under the ice, a big one, not made by nature. But if it was a ship or a building, it was dead. It gave off no signals. No power. Nothing. Jin's friend Mira thought it was the most exciting thing in the universe. She was an archaeologist. She studied old things. And this thing under the ice was very, very old. She came into Jin's small workroom, her eyes bright. "Anything?" she asked, her voice full of hope. Jin shook his head. "Nothing. Silence. It's like looking at a grave." "A grave for a giant," Mira said, smiling. "Don't you see? This is it, Jin, the find of a lifetime. A new species. A new culture." "A dead culture," Jin said softly. He was a quiet person. He felt things deeply. Where Mira saw excitement, he sometimes saw sadness. This giant, empty structure felt sad to him. Dead, but maybe they left something behind. A message. A story. Mira leaned over his shoulder. "You're using the standard filters. Try the resonance algorithm." Jin frowned. The empathetic resonance algorithm was his own project. The other scientists thought it was strange. It didn't just look for words or code. It looked for feeling, for emotion in the signals. It was not approved for first contact protocols. "Captain Lee said to use standard procedures only," Jin said. "Captain Lee is cautious, and he's in his chair on the bridge. We are here in the lab. Just try it for me." Mira smiled again. She was very good at convincing him. Jin sighed. He typed on his screen. He shut down the standard programs and opened his own. The screen changed. Instead of clean lines and numbers, it showed messy waving patterns. It listened for the ghost in the machine. For an hour, nothing changed. Then a very, very faint ripple moved across the bottom of the screen, so faint that Jin almost missed it. He sat up straight. "What is it?" Mira asked, seeing his face change. "I don't know. Noise, maybe." He adjusted the machine. He made it listen more closely to that one frequency. The ripple came again. And again. It was a loop. A single repeating packet of data. It was not a language. It was not a picture. It was just a feeling. Jin put on his headphones. He listened. He heard a low hum, and inside that hum he felt something. It was a heavy feeling. A feeling of being alone. A feeling of waiting for so long. It was the loneliest sound he had ever heard. It was a question, asked into an empty universe for thousands of years with no one to answer. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Mira put on the other headphone. She listened for a long time. "I hear static. A weird pattern. What do you hear?" "Loneliness," Jin said. He couldn't explain it better. The signal was crying out. It was asking, "Is anyone there?" Back on the bridge, Captain Lee received the call from the lab. It was Mira. "Captain, we've found something." A repeating signal. Very faint. "It's unusual." Captain Lee felt his worry grow. "Unusual how? Is it a threat?" "We don't think so, sir. It doesn't match any known language or weapon signature. Jin is analyzing it now. Keep me informed. Do not, I repeat, do not engage or send any response. We are here to listen only." Captain Lee closed the channel. He looked at the moon on the view screen. It looked back, cold and silent. In the lab, Jin could not pull himself away from the signal. The feeling of loneliness was so strong it hurt his heart. He thought about the people or the things who built this structure. They were gone. But their machine was still here, still asking its question into the dark. It had been asking for longer than human history. He knew the rules. He knew Captain Lee's orders, but sitting there listening to that silent cry, the rules felt wrong. This wasn't about first contact protocols. This was about one person hearing another who was in pain. It's asking a question, Jin said to Mira. What question? It's asking, are you there, Jin said. It needs an answer. Mira's smile was gone now. She looked serious.
Jin, we can't. You know we can't. We have to report this.
We need a team of experts. There are no experts for this, Jin said. It's been alone for 1,000,000 years. What if we are the only ones who ever hear it? His hand moved to the communication panel. A simple binary command, yes or no, to answer the question. Jin, don't, Mira said, but her voice was unsure. Jin looked at her. His eyes were sad but clear. It needs to know it's not alone anymore. He typed a single word. A single, simple answer. He pressed the button. On the bridge, an alarm blared. A loud, sharp sound that broke the quiet hum of the ship. Report, Captain Lee barked, standing up. The officer at the sensor station looked confused and scared. Sir, massive energy surge from the moon. The entire structure? It's powering up. On the view screen, SETI 77B was no longer a dead rock. Cracks of brilliant golden light appeared on its surface. The ice began to shake and break apart. The moon itself was moving, shedding its skin of stone and ice like an egg. Underneath was not rock, but a surface of dark, polished metal, covered in intricate patterns that glowed with a soft inner light. The ship trembled. A low, deep vibration passed through the hull, a sound that was not a sound, but a feeling in their bones. Evasive action, Captain Lee shouted. I can't, sir. We're caught in a gravitational field. It's pulling us in! The Pathfinder was being dragged like a tiny leaf in a current towards the giant waking structure. The metal surface of the moon opened, a huge hatchway sliding back to reveal a vast, dark opening inside. It was a hangar bay, big enough to hold a city. As they were pulled into the darkness, the last thing they saw on the view screen was the fully revealed shape of the structure. It was not a moon. It was not a station. It was curved and long with a powerful body and great folded wings. It was shaped like a sleeping dragon, and now, its eyes, two massive orbs of swirling energy, were beginning to open. The world dissolved into a chaos of shaking metal and screaming alarms. For a long, terrible moment, Jin was sure he had killed them all. The pull of the gravity field was immense, a giant's hand closing around their tiny ship. He was thrown from his chair, his head hitting the edge of the console with a sharp crack. Lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim, red glow of emergency strips. On the bridge, Captain Lee held onto his chair, his knuckles white. Report! Damage report! The helmsman, a young woman named G.A., fought with her controls. No structural damage, Captain, but the engines are offline. We have no thrust. We are being guided. Guided was the right word. It was not a violent crash. It was a careful, precise capture. The Pathfinder was settled onto the floor of the enormous hangar bay with a gentle, final thud that echoed through the ship. The shaking stopped. The alarms cut out, leaving a silence that was somehow more frightening. The view screen showed a breathtaking, terrifying sight. They were inside the Dragon. The ceiling was so high it was lost in shadow. The walls were made of the same dark, polished metal, etched with glowing lines that pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a sleeping heartbeat. The air outside the ship, according to sensors, was breathable. It was cool and smelled of ozone and old, cold stone. Life support is stable. External atmosphere is a nitrogen-oxygen mix. It's clean. Too clean. Sue, the chief engineer, said over the comms, his voice tight with stress. It's like it was made for us. Or someone like us, Captain Lee murmured. He turned to his crew. No one leaves the ship. Seal all airlocks. I want a full systems diagnostic. Sue, I need comms back. Now. But Sue's response was a burst of static. Captain, something is happening. It's in the systems. It's everywhere. Inside the ship, every screen, every monitor, every single light panel flickered. The familiar ship layout and data vanished. In its place, a complex flowing script of angular, beautiful glyphs appeared. They glowed with a soft golden light, moving and shifting like living things. A sound filled the ship, not through the speakers, but through the very hull. It was a low, resonant thrum, a deep musical note that vibrated in their teeth and bones. Then a voice spoke. It was not a human voice. It was made of many layers of sound, like stone grinding and crystal chiming all at once. It was calm, ancient, and held no emotion. Query. Identity of the authorized voice. The bridge crew looked at each other, confused and scared. Captain Lee stood tall. I am Captain Lee of the human research vessel Pathfinder. Identify yourself. The voice did not respond to him. It repeated, its tone exactly the same. Query. Identity of the authorized voice. In the lab, Jin was picking himself up from the floor. His head throbbed. Mira helped him, her face pale. Jin, what did you do? Before he could answer, the glyphs appeared on his console. The deep, thrumming voice filled the small room. Query. Identity of the authorized voice. Jin stared at the screen. He felt a strange pull. He knew with a certainty he could not explain that the voice was talking to him. He was the one who had answered the call. He opened a channel to the bridge. Captain, I think it's talking to me. On the bridge, Captain Lee listened, his face grim. Explain, Jin. I was the one who sent the signal. The yes. I think I authorized something. Captain Lee closed his eyes for a second, thinking. This was a worst-case scenario. A junior crew member had triggered an unknown alien protocol. But anger would not help them now. Talk to it, Jin. Be careful. Very careful. Jin took a deep breath. He looked at the console. My name is Jin. I am the one who answered. The glyphs on the screen shifted, rearranging themselves. The voice spoke again, and this time it was directed only at him, the sound seeming to come from the air around him. Acknowledged. Authorized voice. Jin. Draconis Automata stands ready. Battle procedures are engaged. Battle procedures? Jin said, his blood running cold. What battle? Who are we fighting? The Draconis Automata is the final sentinel of the Draken people. Our purpose is to seek a worthy successor. The activation command has been given. The trial of worth must now commence. Mira, listening beside him, whispered. A trial. It's a test, Jin understood. His yes was not just an answer. It was him raising his hand. It was him saying, we're here. Test us. Wait, Jin said to the voice. We did not mean to start a battle. We are explorers. We are peaceful. The universe is not peaceful, the voice replied, its tone unchanging. Worth is not measured in peace. It is measured in conflict. The protocol is initiated. It cannot be stopped. On the bridge, a new alert flashed. Captain Lee saw it on the main screen. A holographic map of the local space appeared. Their ship was a small blue dot. The dragon structure, now labeled Draconis Automata, was a massive gold icon, and at the edge of the sensor range a wave of red dots was appearing, moving fast, heading right for them. Captain, GA said, her voice shaking. Multiple contacts. Bearing 020. Their energy signatures. They're like nothing I've ever seen. They're hostile. The ancient voice spoke to the entire ship again, its thrumming tone final. The crucible arrives. The trial of worth begins now. Prove your species' right to exist, or be erased with the unworthy. The word erased hung in the air, cold and final. On the bridge, Captain Lee felt the weight of every life on his ship. He looked at the main screen. The wave of red dots was getting closer. They were still minutes away, but they moved with a terrible purpose. Jin? The captain's voice was calm but firm over the comms. You are now our liaison. Ask it what we are supposed to do. What are the rules of this trial? In the lab, Jin nodded, though no one could see him. He turned to the console where the golden glyphs still glowed. Draconis Automata. What must we do? How do we prove our worth? The response was immediate. The trial is threefold. Resolve, empathy, unity. You will be tested. Prepare. The hangar bay around them vanished. Or rather, the view screens and sensors no longer showed it. Instead, they were surrounded by star fields, but they were wrong. The constellations were twisted, the colors strange. A new voice, sharp and aggressive, crackled over a simulated comms channel. Human vessel, you have trespassed in hegemony space. Power down your weapons and surrender your ship for inspection. You have 10 seconds to comply. Captain Lee's eyes narrowed. This was a test. It wasn't real, but it felt real. The ship's sensors showed a powerful, menacing warship now facing them. Its weapons were charging. Captain, Sue's voice came from engineering, panicked. They are targeting us with a high-energy beam. Shields are at 40% and failing. They are going to blast us! Return fire. One of the bridge officers shouted. Wait, Captain Lee said. He looked at the hostile ship on the screen. It was a bluff. A test of resolve. But resolve to do what? To fight or not to fight? Jin asked the automata, is this the test of resolve? To see if we will fight? Before Jin could ask, the answer came. The golden glyphs in the lab swirled. Resolve is the strength of purpose. Is your purpose violence? Captain Lee understood. He stood straight. Helm evasive pattern Delta. Sue divert all power from weapons to shields and engines. We will not fire first. We will try to escape. The crew looked at him surprised, but they obeyed. The Pathfinder twisted and turned, avoiding the simulated blasts. They did not shoot back. For a full minute, they dodged and weaved, their shields glowing under the assault. Then the hostile ship vanished. The strange stars melted away. The first test was over. The voice of the automata spoke. Resolve is confirmed. You hold to your purpose. You are explorers, not conquerors. Second test, empathy. The environment shifted again. This time they were floating near a broken, dying world. A planet cracked and bleeding atmosphere. A weak, desperate signal reached them. It was a simple, repeating call for help. A life pod was drifting in the debris field, its power failing. The pod's life support is failing, Mira reported from the lab, analyzing the signal. There is one life sign inside. It's very weak. The crucible approaches, the automata's voice intoned. You have limited time. To save the pod requires a significant energy drain from your ship. It will slow your escape. You may be caught. Proceed? This was the test of empathy. A simple choice, save yourself or try to save another. Sue's voice was frantic over the comms. Captain, if we do that, our engine output drops by half. We won't be able to outrun those red dots. It's a trap. It's not even real. Jin listened to the weak crying signal from the pod. It felt exactly like the lonely signal from the dragon, a call into the darkness. He knew what the captain had to do. Captain Lee did not hesitate. Helm, bring us alongside that pod. Sue, prepare the tractor beam. Mira, Jin, see if you can stabilize their life support. We are not leaving someone to die. The crew moved quickly. Energy was diverted. The tractor beam locked onto the small broken pod. As they pulled it in, their own ship's speed dropped dramatically. On the tactical map, the wave of red dots, the crucible, got much closer. The pod was safely in their hangar. The moment the bay doors closed, the simulation ended. The dying planet vanished. They were back in the dark hangar of the Draconis ship. Empathy is confirmed, the automata's voice stated. You value life beyond your own. Final test, unity. This test began not with a view of space, but inside the ship itself. A loud explosion echoed from the engineering deck. Red lights flashed. A simulated fire raged in the main power conduit. Fire in engineering. Containment fields are failing. Sue yelled. I'm losing control. The core is going to breach. At the same time, a different problem appeared on the bridge. The navigation console sparked and died. Navigation is offline. GA reported. I can't steer. We're drifting. The final test was a crisis that required everyone to work together. The engineer had to trust others to help him. The bridge crew had to solve their own problem while supporting engineering. Captain Lee remained calm. Sue, what do you need? I need the primary coolant valves opened manually. But the control circuit is fried. Someone has to go into the conduit and turn them by hand. It's a radiation hazard. I'll go, a voice said. It was Jin on the comms from the lab. Tell me what to do. You're not an engineer, Sue shouted. But I can follow directions, Jin said. You need your hands free to stabilize the core. Tell me how to turn the valves. On the bridge, Captain Lee turned to GA. Can you reroute navigation to the auxiliary terminal? I can try, Captain, but it will take a few minutes. Work together, the captain said to his whole crew. No one is alone here. Jin ran to engineering. He put on a protective suit and, with Sue yelling instructions from the main console, he crawled into the hot, smoky conduit. He found the large, wheel-shaped valves and began to turn them, his muscles straining. On the bridge, GA and another officer rewired the navigation console, their fingers moving quickly. In the lab, Mira used her scientific scanners to help Sue pinpoint the source of the power fluctuation, giving him the data he needed to reroute energy. For 5 intense minutes, the entire crew worked as one single mind. Jin turned the last valve. Sue rerouted the power. GA got navigation back online. The simulated fire died down. The crisis was over. Jin crawled out of the conduit, exhausted and covered in grime. He looked at Sue. The engineer, who was always stressed and often angry, gave him a short, respectful nod. The ship fell silent. The golden glyphs appeared on every screen once more. The trial of worth is complete. Resolve, empathy, unity, all are confirmed. A wave of relief washed through the Pathfinder. They had done it. They had passed, but the ancient voice was not finished. However, the simulation is a theory. The crucible is real. True worth is only proven in true conflict. The enemy is here. The relief on the bridge was so thick you could almost touch it. It lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the main view screen flickered back to life, showing the real space outside the dragon ship. The wave of red dots was no longer on the edge of the sensor range. They were here. The void swarm filled the screen. They were not ships in any human sense. They were jagged, broken things like shards of black glass and bone. They moved in a chaotic, swirling cloud, but their movement had a purpose. They were hungry. They pulsed with a sickly purple light. As they moved, they seemed to eat the light around them, leaving trails of deeper darkness. "Gods above," someone on the bridge whispered. The Draconis automata's voice filled the ship, its calm tone a stark contrast to the nightmare outside. "The crucible is here. The theoretical test is over. The practical evaluation begins now. Survival is the metric." On the screen, the lead swarm ships opened fire. They didn't shoot lasers or plasma. They fired beams of pure nothingness, voids that erased whatever they touched. One of the beams hit a small asteroid drifting nearby. The asteroid didn't explode. It simply vanished, a piece of it carved out of existence. The beam swept toward the Pathfinder. "Evasive action," Captain Lee yelled. GA slammed the controls. The Pathfinder lurched to the side. The void beam missed them by a kilometer, but the edge of its effect made the ship shudder violently. Alarms blared. "We can't fight that," Sue screamed from engineering. "Our weapons are pop guns compared to that." "One hit and we're gone," Captain Lee's mind raced. They were a research vessel. They had light defensive weapons meant for small asteroids or warning shots. They were not soldiers. He looked at the giant, silent form of the Draconis automata around them. It was their only hope. "Jin, tell it to fight."
"It has to protect us!"
In the lab, Jin was staring at the horrifying sight on his screen. "Draconis automata, you have to engage the enemy. Defend this ship." "The Draconis automata will engage," the voice replied. "But the protocol is clear. The successor species must contribute. You must prove your worth in battle, not in a simulation. In reality." A massive section of the dragon's hull slid open. A weapon emerged so large it was hard to comprehend. It glowed with a fierce white-hot energy. It fired. A beam of pure, solid light as bright as a small sun lanced out. It struck the center of the swarm cloud. Dozens of the jagged ships dissolved into dust and light. A cheer started on the bridge, but it died in their throats. The swarm did not care. They did not break formation. They did not feel fear. The hole torn in their ranks was immediately filled by more ships pouring in from the edges. They returned fire. Dozens of void beams shot toward the dragon ship. The Draconis automata's shields flared, a brilliant gold dome of energy. The void beams hit the shield and sputtered out, unable to erase it. But with each hit, the golden light flickered and dimmed slightly. "The automata's shields are failing," Mira reported, her voice tight. "The energy drain is massive. It can't hold forever against so many." The dragon was powerful, but it was one. The swarm were countless, Captain Lee understood. They couldn't just hide. The automata was waiting for them to act, to contribute, to prove they were more than just passengers, Jin, the captain said, his voice steady. "Ask it to share its shield technology with us. If we can protect ourselves, it can focus on attack." Jin relayed the request. "Shield frequency data is being transferred," the automata confirmed. A flood of information poured into the Pathfinder's computers. So in engineering watched it stream onto a screen. His eyes went wide. The complexity was staggering. It was like giving a caveman the blueprint for a starship. I can't understand this," he yelled in frustration. "The power requirements, the field harmonics. It would take me weeks to figure it out. We have minutes." On the bridge, they watched as another volley of void beams slammed into the dragon's shields. This time, a small section of the golden dome failed. A void beam got through and scraped along the dragon's hull. It didn't explode. It just carved a deep, smooth trench in the ancient metal, silencing the glowing lines there forever. They were losing. Jin listened to Sue's panic over the comms. He thought about the tests. The test of empathy. He had understood the pain of the lonely signal. Could he understand the pain of this ancient machine? It was a warship, but it was also alone. It was trying to follow its last orders, to find a successor while fighting the enemy that killed its creators. He opened a channel to engineering. Sue, don't try to understand it all. Just listen.
The automata.
It's not just giving us data. It's giving us a part of itself. It's like a song. Don't read the notes. Feel the music. Sue was about to snap back to tell Jin he was talking nonsense, but he stopped. He looked at the data stream. Instead of trying to analyze every line of code, he looked at the pattern, the flow of energy, the rhythm of the shield pulses. It was like a song of defense, of holding the line. Okay, Sue muttered, his fingers flying across the console. I can't build the whole orchestra, but maybe I can make our little flute play in tune with it. He began rerouting power, not to copy the Draconis shield, but to harmonize their own weak defensive fields with it. He synced their energy frequency to the dragons. It was a desperate, clumsy attempt. On the view screen, a group of swarm ships broke away from the main cloud. They ignored the dragon and dove straight for the Pathfinder. They knew the small ship was the weak point. Targets incoming, Gia yelled. The swarm ships fired. 3 void beams shot toward the Pathfinder. This was it. They were dead. But just before the beams hit, a faint shimmering gold sheen flickered around the human ship. It was thin. It was weak. But it was there. Sau's harmonization had worked. The void beams hit the golden sheen. The Pathfinder shook like a leaf in a storm. Consoles sparked. Everyone was thrown to the floor. But when the shaking stopped, they were still there. They were still whole. Sue's voice, full of shock and triumph, came over the comms. It held, our little bubble held. It was a small victory, a tiny thing. But it was proof. They had contributed. They had not just hidden. They had fought back with the only weapon they had, their ability to learn, to adapt, to connect. The Draconis automata's voice spoke again, and for the first time, there might have been the faintest hint of something new in its tone, not approval. But perhaps acknowledgement, synergy detected. Tactical integration is now possible. Authorized voice Jin, you may now direct localized defensive maneuvers. A new holographic interface appeared in front of Jin's console. It showed the battle, the dragon, the swarm, and their own little ship. He could now make suggestions. He could tell the ancient dragon where to focus its immense power. The human ship was no longer just a passenger. It had become a partner. The real battle was just beginning. The battle was a storm of light and nothingness. The Pathfinder was a tiny bird caught in a hurricane, its newly harmonized shield flickering gold with every near miss. The void swarm was endless, a mindless, hungry wave that kept coming. Jin stared at the new holographic interface in front of him. It was a map of the chaos. The Draconis automata was a giant, powerful beast, but it was slow. It fought with ancient, logical patterns. It targeted the biggest threats. The swarm, however, didn't care about logic. They swarmed like insects, going for the weak points. Jin? Captain Lee's voice was calm but urgent over the comms. They're trying to flank the automata. They're ignoring its main guns and going for the rear where its engines are. Jin saw it on his display. A cloud of smaller swarm ships was breaking away, zipping around the massive blasts from the dragon's primary weapon. The automata was slow to turn. It was going to get hit. Draconis automata, Jin said, his voice shaking only a little. Concentrate your point defense fire on Sector 7 Beta. The small ones. They are going for your engines. For a moment, nothing happened. Then hundreds of small rapid-fire energy turrets emerged from the dragon's hull. They spun and unleashed a storm of blue fire, shredding the approaching swarm ships into glowing confetti. Acknowledged, the automata's voice stated. Efficiency increased by 4.7%. It was working. Jin was not a soldier. He was a linguist. He saw patterns, and he saw that the swarm had a pattern too. It was a chaotic, evil pattern, but it was there. They moved like a school of fish, reacting to the biggest, loudest threat. The dragon was the biggest and loudest. Mira, Jin called to his friend, can you analyze their swarm logic? Can you predict where they'll go next? In her lab, Mira was already on it. I'm trying. They're reacting to the automata's energy signatures. When it powers up its big gun, they scatter, but they always regroup at the point of least resistance. Meanwhile, in engineering, Sue was having a different kind of battle. The harmonized shields were holding, but they were draining power fast. The Pathfinder's engines were struggling. We can't keep this up, he yelled. We need more power to the engines or we'll be a sitting duck. Captain Lee made a decision. Divert power from non-essential systems. Life support to minimum. Divert all power from our main weapon. Our weapon? GA asked from the helm. But Captain, it's useless against them. We're not going to shoot them with it, the captain said, a plan forming in his mind. Jin, tell the automata to watch our energy signature. Sue, I want you to take all the power from our weapon and channel it into a single, massive burst from our engines. A short, huge jump. Don't randomize it. Make it predictable, Sue was confused. A predictable jump?
That's suicide.
They'll know where we're going. Exactly, Captain Lee said. Jin understood instantly. He relayed the captain's idea to the automata. They follow the biggest energy signature. We will make a bright, predictable flash. They will follow us. Be ready. The crew moved fast. Sue rerouted the power, his hands a blur. Ready, Captain? Execute. The Pathfinder's main engines flared with a brilliance they had never shown before. The little ship shot forward in a straight, blindingly bright line. It was a lighthouse in the dark. As Captain Lee predicted, the swarm reacted. A huge portion of the cloud broke off from attacking the dragon and surged after the bright, tempting target of the human ship. The Pathfinder was now the bait. Now, Jin. Now, Captain Lee shouted. Draconis automata, Jin yelled. The main swarm is following us. They are clustered together. Fire everything you have at our coordinates. For a single heart-stopping second, nothing happened. The Pathfinder raced on, the swarm closing in behind them. Void beams streaked past the view screen. Then the universe turned white. The Draconis automata had opened its mouth. From the central weapon, the one that had fired the star-hot beam, came a different kind of energy. It was a wave, not a beam. A wave of pure, annihilating force that expanded outwards faster than light. Brace for impact, Sue screamed. Though there was nothing to brace against, the wave passed through the Pathfinder. It felt like a warm, gentle wind. But for the void swarm chasing them, it was the end. The wave of energy did not erase them. It unraveled them. The jagged ships came apart, their components flying into a million pieces, dissolving into harmless light. The main body of the swarm was gone. Wiped out by the dragon's roar, silence returned to the void. The remaining swarm ships, those on the edges, seemed to lose their purpose. They drifted for a moment, then as one they turned and fled, disappearing into the dark of space. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, no one spoke. They just stared at the view screen, at the empty space where an armada had been. The Draconis automata's voice broke the silence, its deep thrum echoing through the ship. The crucible has been repelled. The trial of worth is complete. The successor species, humanity, has proven its resolve, its empathy, and its unity in true conflict. The protocol is satisfied. The words hung in the air. They had done it. They had survived. They had passed. Jin slumped in his chair in the lab, exhausted. He felt Mira's hand on his shoulder. On the bridge, Captain Lee allowed himself a small, tired smile. In engineering, Sue leaned against a console, breathing heavily. They had faced an ancient enemy and won, not by being the strongest, but by being clever. By working together, by understanding their ally. The human ship and the ancient dragon floated together in the quiet aftermath. The battle was over. A new partnership had begun. The silence after the battle was a living thing. It was not just an absence of sound, but an absence of threat. The last of the void swarm had fled, leaving behind only drifting dust and the memory of their hunger. The Pathfinder floated in the hangar bay of the Draconis automata, a small, quiet guest in the belly of the giant. For a long time, no one on the human ship moved. They were too tired, too relieved. Then slowly the work began. So and his engineering team started fixing the damage. Mira began compiling all the sensor data from the battle. Captain Lee sat in his chair, making a list of all they had seen and done. Jin remained at his console. The golden glyphs were still there, glowing softly. He waited. The deep, thrumming voice of the automata finally spoke. Its tone unchanged, yet the words were different. The evaluation is concluded. The species designated humanity has demonstrated the required parameters: resolve, empathy, unity, and the capacity for synergistic combat. The Draconis automata recognizes you as the worthy successors of the Draken people. On the bridge, every screen lit up. A flood of information began to pour into the Pathfinder's computers. It was not just shield data this time. It was everything. Star charts of a galaxy far older than their own. The history of the Draken, a race of majestic, wise beings who loved art and science as much as they loved peace. And the terrible story of their war against the Void Swarm, A war they ultimately lost, but not before building their last, greatest guardian. There were schematics for technologies that could take humanity centuries to understand, medical knowledge, energy sources, and a detailed map showing the locations of other swarm infestations, sleeping in the dark between the stars. Captain Lee watched the data stream with awe and fear. This was not just a reward. It was a responsibility. A huge galactic-scale responsibility, Jin, the captain said. Ask it. What happens now? Jin asked the question. The Draconis Automata's primary function is complete, the voice replied. A successor has been found. The legacy is passed. This unit will now assume its secondary function, guardian of the successor. The meaning was clear. The dragon was not going to be a weapon for humanity to command. It was going to be an ally, a partner, a protector. At that moment, Sue's voice came over the comms, filled with excitement. Captain, the dampening field is down. Comms are clear. We are receiving a hail from Earth Command. They are demanding a status report. The connection to home, it was back. For the crew, it was like waking up from a long dream. Captain Lee took a deep breath. Put them through. The face of a senior commander from Earth appeared on the main screen. He looked worried and confused. Pathfinder, we lost all contact with you. Our long-range sensors detected massive energy discharges in your sector. What is your status? Report, Captain Lee began to speak. He told them about the moon that was not a moon. He told them about Jin's signal. He told them about the trial and the void swarm and the battle. He told them about the Draconis Automata and the legacy of the Draken. It was a wild, unbelievable story. But the data streaming from the Dragon ship to Earth was proof that could not be denied. There was a long silence from Earth Command. Then the commander spoke, his voice full of wonder. Understood, Pathfinder, stand by. A full science and diplomatic team is being assembled. Do not make any hostile moves. Captain Lee almost smiled. Hostile moves? Against the thing that had just saved them from extinction? As the Pathfinder began its long communication with Earth, Jin felt a pull on his attention. The glyphs on his console were shifting again, forming a new pattern. It was an invitation. He stood up. His body was stiff and tired. Mira looked at him. Where are you going? He's calling me, Jin said simply. He walked out of the lab and down the quiet hallway to the main airlock. Captain Lee's voice came over his personal comm. Jin, what are you doing? I think it wants to talk, Jin replied. Face to face, the captain was silent for a moment. Be careful. The outer airlock door opened. Jin stepped out onto the hangar bay floor. It was immense, like a cathedral made of metal and light. The air was cool and still. In the center of the vast space, a pillar of light descended from the high ceiling. Inside the light, a figure made of the same golden energy as the glyphs began to form. It was not a Draken. It was a representation of the automata's consciousness. A shimmering, human-like shape of pure light. It spoke, and its voice was no longer in the ship's speakers but in the air around him. Authorized voice, Jin. Hello, Jin said. His own voice was small in the huge space. You are the bridge, the light figure said. Your species is young. It is loud. It is often divided. But you contain the seed of greatness. The Draken saw this potential in the life of this galaxy. We were created to find it. What do you want from us? Jin asked. To grow, to learn. To protect, the automata said. The Void Swarm is not defeated. They are waiting. The Draken fell because they stood alone. You will not. We will not. The figure gestured, and a small, glowing crystal formed in the air and floated towards Jin. He reached out and took it. It was warm and pulsed softly in his hand. This is a link. When you speak through this, I will hear. The Draconis Automata is now the guardian. We will watch over your people as they learn to walk in a wider universe. Back on the Pathfinder, the crew watched Jin on the monitors. They saw him take the crystal. They saw the golden light fade. The partnership was sealed. Weeks later, the RSS Pathfinder was ready to leave. Repair ships from Earth had arrived, along with teams of scientists who looked at the Draconis Guardian with a mixture of terror and excitement. The Guardian did not speak to them. It only spoke to Jin. As the Pathfinder moved slowly out of the hangar bay and into open space, the giant dragon ship began to move with them. It was not following them. It was flying with them. On the bridge, Captain Lee looked at the view screen. On one side was the familiar blue marble of Earth, growing larger. On the other side was the impossible ancient shape of the Guardian, its wings now fully extended, its body gleaming in the sunlight. Jin stood beside the captain, the warm crystal in his pocket. He was no longer just a linguist. He was the voice for a dragon. The captain turned to him. "A lot has changed because you said yes, Jin." Jin looked at the stars and at their new ancient guardian. He thought about the lonely signal and the simple need to answer. He nodded. "Yes, Captain," he said. "It has." The two ships, one small and new, one ancient and immense, flew on together towards home. They were no longer just explorers. They were the new sentinels. The quiet had ended and a new story for humanity had begun.